We chose to have more kids after Dave and I were married for 4 years. Dave was the lead plaintiff's attorney at my health insurance company's deposition, and I was one of 6 defending a weak position. Astute and prepared for a partnership. Dave is a lawyer who will make millions upholding the law. I'm a good attorney, but not as good as him. It shocked me that he contacted me not long after the claim was approved. He desired something more sensual than my knowledge of the law. I discovered over a number of dinners, drinks, dances, and gatherings that he was an entertaining and hilarious conversationalist. Sex was what we desired most of all. My body is passionate and sensual, and Dave is a creative and thoughtful partner, delicate. After the wedding, we relocated into one. On Long Island, gated enclaves for the wealthy proliferated like weeds. At least those who can afford a couple $1 million on a 4-bedroom ranch that's too big for us and too small for the price. If I go back to work, we can expand and take on an au pair. With more money than a young couple could ever dream of, we appeared to be living the American dream and had no worries at all. Were the hours that Dave worked. We are both attorneys, but I work from 9 to 5 in an office, and he pursues a strong alliance. I go to a ton of meetings, dinners, wine tastings, barbecues, and neighborhood events because I live in a gated community. At these numerous gatherings, I got to know Joanna and her husband Walter, and we became friends. I was intrigued by this pair. In the final month of my pregnancy, I decided to study everything I could while I had free time and a vacation. Rather than employing a private investigator or looking into their personal life, I chose to become friends with Joanna, who lives 2 doors down from us and is unemployed. There was a mystery I didn't need to solve, yet I was curious but not crazy. It looks that Walter is a licensed auditor. He sprints a little company. Interestingly, unlike other independent contractors, he never actively seeks out new business or contacts. He's not fat, rather. He appears like a bald accountant in his 40s with a pot belly. He's a 5'3" literary nerd who frequently comes out as distant or confused. He's never quite fit in with the boys, doesn't drink, fish, golf, or conform to the stereotype of the alpha male in our community. Surprisingly for a married man, he is also shy with women. Always the gentleman, he blends in without drawing attention to himself. Still, Joanna is stunning, lively and seductive. About 30, but she looks younger and is totally devoted to Walter. She has a smile that would make the Mona Lisa blush. A body that even on my best day I could not match, breasts the size of a small pineapple, maybe enlarged, and an enigmatic sultriness that begs for sex. And that's before she ever had 2 kids. She has only twice shown anger to me. There was the day you vocally scolded several men who were making fun of Walter in front of her, and they left with their tails between your legs. There was also the occasion a local ladies' man tried to humiliate her with your antics. She made it quite evident that if he or anybody else tried, they would fail, and he was probably relieved that his testicles were still intact. Her belongings are only Walter's. Her apparent. An unhealthful obsession with Walter. Walter doesn't appear to realize it, but the rest of us do. He appears dedicated to her and shows her love and respect, but he's also tedious to observe the signals that others interpret. After enduring it for so long, he might have come to terms with it as normal. As previously indicated, they can afford to live here and are just 2 doors down. It seems like they are without the toys in the neighborhood. The cars don't have any individuality. The yard doesn't have the boats, man-cave mansions with mahogany bars, or 6-foot TVs that some have mentioned. They have a pool in their backyard and a typical barbecue, just like other dwellings here, but nothing very noteworthy. She didn't follow fashion trends, yet she never had a problem with money. She just wore 2 tiny gold cylinder earrings, a gold wedding ring, and a basic but respectable wedding band. They are able to purchase toys, so there's no need to show them off in order to compete. Their 2-year-old girl and 6-year-old son are their offspring. These well-mannered, charming children are undoubtedly loved by their parents. A Latina girl tends to them, similar to a nanny or maid. Along with Joan, a stay-at-home mother. Still, they're typical. Nothing noteworthy, but I think my 6-year-old son attends one of the best private schools in the area. While the infant is being watched by the nanny and his father is at work, Mom drives him to and from school. At that point I was 8 months along with a work leave of absence. I used to walk for exercise every morning. Even though I lived nearby, I left early to watch Joan send her son off at school. I invited her to coffee at home after our conversation. After taking her son to the gym, going shopping, and having a hectic morning, she made a commitment to stop by for coffee and conversation at midday. Although I was aware of their story, I wasn't prepared for it to happen that day. My mistake. Joanna was running late. As we sipped coffee and spoke about becoming pregnant and having kids, I asked her if she wanted more. Walter responds that it is up to him, as things will turn out. We will provide more if he requests it. If not. She spun her little gold earring between her fingers as she spoke, a nervous gesture I had witnessed her use many times when discussing Walter. As it's not the 1800s, you have a viewpoint. He is powerless to compel. Station. Walter would never act in such a way. He's amazing, and I can't imagine getting married to someone better. I'll do everything for him, including having kids and being without them, to make him happy. Do you really love him that much? We've all seen how you treat him like the prize-winning child of God. That's how you handle him. Before meeting the two of you, I had never seen anything like this. Sometimes it seems as though he doesn't understand your assistance. She spun the earring once more and said, I hope he never realizes I gave her a closer look after she made that strange remark. You desire that he not understand your love. Not that it's difficult to clarify. Roberta, just a quick question. Lawyer, can you keep a secret if I tell you? Like a secret client of a lawyer, always talked about? If hired, I am able to. Do you have problems? Is Walter threatening or hurting you? Not at all like that. I'd want to offer one anecdote as a precautionary measure that will never occur again. What qualifications does hiring you have? Very simple. If you could give me $10 up front, we could create attorney-client privilege orally. She smiled and gave me a 20 from her purse. Consider yourself employed. She answered, I grew up on Long Island, but not here. Half of my father's money, the roofer, was spent at a bar. Our financial situation was never great. In contrast to this area, we belonged to the lower middle class, yet Mom was a hairdresser and brought home a few items. It's amazing that, in spite of his drinking, womanizing, and fighting, I made it through high school and was accepted into secretarial school. I worked at a recruitment agency when I first met Walter, solid on temporary assignments. His secretary's maternity leave. They decided to hire me after her assistant covered for her. I was therefore second cast. What time was this? Approximately 10 years prior. Looking for a serious partner, I was 24 years old and tired of going out to parties. I was a self-centered little bitch who dreamed of having a decent life after finding a wealthy husband to live with for a few years. Walter looked perfect. When he was 32 years old, 8 years older than me, his ignorance and inexperience were even greater. Although he wasn't wealthy in my opinion, he did have a business, a respectable apartment in a nice area of town, and the makings of a great first spouse. I moved in with him after we started dating after I left his office. We were married a year later. Walter was laid back and friendly. I thought I could have him all to myself. He never alluded to a marriage contract and showed complete trust. I won't sugarcoat my history as a gold digger, but I'm not proud of it either. 10 years later, you're still content. Wed. Yes, it is. Our interaction was ordinary. I just had to want a real house that we could call our own for our marriage to work. I've always leased apartments. We looked about and decided on our current one. Despite its size, Walter wished there was space for children. Although I didn't want kids, I also didn't want to let him down right before the wedding. For me, his failure to do so was fantastic news. After I told Blink about the pricing, they easily added me to the contract. But just before the wedding, something happened that, although at the time I didn't think was significant, was probably the most significant occasion in my life. What was that? A few weeks after we were engaged, Walter invited us to dinner with a friend from high school. We went to this fancy mom and pop Italian restaurant that I had never been to before. When we walked into the restaurant, we felt as though we had broken into someone's private residence and were not welcome. Everything changed when Walter revealed who we were meeting to the head waiter. The most beautiful table was shown to us. In 5 minutes, the proprietor brought us a bottle of the finest wine. The service was fantastic after that. Always on hand, 2 waiters were at the table before we could blink. We had barely completed our dinner when 2 massive men came in and surveyed the eatery. Walter's pals weren't there yet. One departed, and the other joined us from behind. The first man was back, accompanied by 2 other men, one somewhat older than Walter and beautifully dressed. Walter got up and gave them. They showed me their friend Tony and Salvatore, his grandfather. Unlike Walter, these 2 were close. I had spent my entire childhood on Long Island. I asked him about it, and he stated he had no idea Tony was an old-school friend. They generally departed swiftly. After the elderly man made a quick toast, they all drank to celebrate the success of our wedding. Tony gave me a gift before we were married. They hugged and took off with $10,000 worth of diamond earrings, I found out. The wedding was empty, and I didn't see Tony again for 2 years. People claim that life continued. My attention was diverted by getting married, moving, purchasing furniture, and decorating the home. From that dinner. Walter never seemed ambitious despite working every day. I kept asking him whether he wanted to expand the firm and bring on more clients, but he always replied he was content. There was never a problem with money. He never objected to my purchase, even though I had no idea how much he had. You achieved marital bliss. Let's just say our marriage is getting along. Although Walter is kind, gentle, and sweet, sometimes a woman wants more in bed. Until I saw how valuable Walter was, I wasn't prepared to have a divorce. I needed to be cautious, but something more robust was required. At home, I had nothing planned. I joined the gym since there were too many annoying individuals there, and the evenings were free. To stay in shape, I wanted to work out. My personal trainer was added. Christopher tested my personal boundaries, both inside and outside the gym. He was partly Italian, standing 1.85 meters tall, and as tough as nails. Our covert operation comprised getting together for fun-filled games and gatherings at hotels multiple times a week. He was so persistent in getting me what I needed. Your relationship. Did Walter find this out? Never, but it had a terrible ending and didn't happen again. It's interesting to note that Chris and I reserved a hotel room because Walter had to work for 2 days and a night. We usually hung out for 2 hours during the day, but we had never done this before. It was supposed to be enjoyable for both of us. Few memories remain. I suppose they both gave us drugs. That one evening, 6 tough men dragged us into a car and drove us to a far-off warehouse. Chris sold steroids, so I figured there had to be a connection. It looked horrible, but I was in the wrong location at the wrong time. Were you taken captive? What took place? How did you get away? Did Walter discover the truth? Her voice grew monotonous as she told me her story, as though she had shut herself off from the world. Her details and description unnerved me. Following the drug's onset, I found myself chained to a chair. They used elastic to bind my arms and legs to stop. I made marks and closed my mouth to avoid speaking. For whatever reason, they didn't mark me. Chris had a rope tied around his wrists and was hanging there. I was seated across from him. His clothing were torn off by 2 men who shredded his shirt around the handcuffs. He was repeatedly beaten with strong chains as a large piece of plastic fabric was placed underneath him. She paused, shuddering, then spoke. Again in a firm voice. After a while, Chris stopped screaming. Fortuitously, he passed out. People went and came back carrying 2 large barrels, one of which held my beloved body. I passed out while pondering what the second one was for me, transfixed. I listened in silence. Such stories were new to me. This surprised even me, beyond my worst expectations. I woke up still chained to the chair. Walter's friend Tony occupied the chair across from me. I told one of the men to take off the bandage covering my mouth and hand. I just sat there staring at him, entranced. He took a drink out of his coat and presented it to me in a flask. I cleared my throat, following a sip. Although it was strong, I needed it. Despite my ill-fitting clothes and the chilly weather, alcohol helped me feel warm. Tony had a soft voice. Joanna, let's talk. I need your utmost candor. Is Joanna able to assist? If you do, you'll be able to securely get back home and we'll forget. Quietly, I nodded. Does Walter know who your boyfriend is? No, I'm not sure. I tried keeping it from him. Could you have gotten pregnant with this man? I use pills for birth control. I'm not ready to have children. Is Walter aware that you take birth control? No. Do you love your husband, Joanna? Do you think you can win him over? I know I can, and I love him, satisfy him. I apologize sincerely. Only required. He used his hand to stop me. I'm sure you don't know this, but your spouse is among the sharpest people I know. If he had wanted to, he could have written and taught effectively. He is skilled at both money laundering and eluding the law. He has few clients and a modest office. Clients include my friends, family, and business associates. We were paid for his services by a number of cartels in this nation. Walter is unique either in spite of or as a result of his skill. We want him to be happy because we know this. As you witnessed today, a lot of people want him to be happy and will stop at nothing to achieve that. We believe you can lift his spirits. I love Walter so much that I can make him happy. Nothing private between us. Walter and I chat a lot, and he loves you. We don't want to let him down because you're the ideal mother and wife. I know you're a gold digger, but so do we. What you were unaware of. Walter possesses an astounding quantity of gold. However, attempting to obtain it will enrage too many people and spoil the entire experience. My friends, we'll drive you to your vehicle and securely deliver you home. Walter does not require knowledge. Give Walter his children and stop using birth control after a month of assurance. Could you help me? Indeed, you will never go. So I hope we never cross paths again. Walter will never understand why he died in one of the countless ways that exist, such as car crashes or robbery. Recognize that you will initially spend some time in hell. Never again will you make me want to talk to you. Never let me worry that whatever you do would enrage Walter. I'm too shocked to speak. Maybe too excited to talk. Joanna kept us sitting there until she finished her story. Walter was not informed of what happened. He was not told. Every day I make an effort to satisfy him, since it's my life. A month later, I received a card from Tony and the earrings you see me wearing in the mail. I wear them every day as a reminder. Which earrings are these? She took one out and handed it to me. It was a small 200-liter barrel made of gold. She now uses the 2 empty barrels she carries on a pallet as a daily reminder of her perfect self. Subscribe to our channel and listen to the following story, which is better to stop your second chaff from lying. If you're younger than 18, don't listen to the next one.